Hi friends, this is Thursday, December 16th. We are talking about factoring by brute force, an extension off of yesterday's factoring by grouping, sometimes called the AC method. Today we're going to be talking about a new strategy, brute force. I'm also going to record a second video. We don't really have time to go over another option. There is a third option out there. It's my favorite option. It's called the box method. I am going to record a video on that. Totally optional. If you don't really click with the first two methods, maybe you'll like the box method. Maybe you want a little bit of a challenge and to learn a third method. And like I said, it's my favorite one. So really, we're just looking for one that clicks for you, whatever that is. I would really encourage you to try brute force and AC at the very least to decide which of the two that you like best. This video is for anybody in my 6th hour or that missed school on the 16th. During 6th hour, I am at the First Mates Freshman Connector. So as an advisor, I am at that. Mr. Server is here for you. He's a great person. He actually is the person who taught me higher algebra. So he is a great teacher, and he's been a great teacher for since I've been in high school. And so please ask questions. Please ask for his help. And of course, be respectful to any guest that is in our class. Your homework is the same as yesterday. It is the same set of problems. I believe there's 6 total problems, 4 factoring, and then 2 solving for x. Try to use both methods on this. See which one that you like the best. Try a couple using the AC grouping method, and try a couple using brute force that we'll talk about here in a moment. But otherwise, let's treat it like a normal class. We'll start with the daily problem. I would love for you to pause this video and try factoring this green equation. Notice I don't have a greatest common factor between 2, 7, and negative 15. So I can't simplify this, so we're going to have to use grouping that we talked about yesterday in class. So give this a shot. See what you remember. It'd be a great launching point to ask Mr. Server any questions that you have. And I'm sure he'd be happy to go through this problem with you. So pause the video right now, try your daily problem. When you unpause, I will go through the answer. Okay, have you unpaused? Have you actually done it? If not, pause again and actually do it. If you have done it, here is the answer. So same thing as we said right before the pause, right? I can't factor anything out of here, so we're going to rewrite this equation so it has two groups in it. In order to do that, we're going to split our 7 term into 2 different things that add back to 7. So this could be like 1 and 6. It could be like 100 and negative 93. The way we know what is the right combination is it has to match A times C. And A times C is negative 30, because 2 times negative 15 would be negative 30. We need this guy to add back to 7, my original green 7 that's in this equation. So we can use our diamond problems to help organize our thinking. And the question is, what multiplies to negative 30 and adds to 7? For this one, it would be 10 times negative 3. So we can rewrite this green equation as 2x squared plus 10x minus 3x minus 15. So I've created 2 groups here. I've rewritten the equation. It's the same exact equation, right? These 2 add back to 7. It's just strategically written so I can factor out any common factors. My first group here, I'll circle in purple. 2x squared and 10x share a 2x in common. So we can pull that out and have left over x plus 5. My other group, I'll do in yellow, go Vikings. Share a negative 3 in common. Can pull a negative 3 out of both negative 3 and negative 15. And left over, I would have x plus 5. At this point, it's really important that you stop and notice that these 2 leftover dudes should be the exact same, right? They're both x plus 5, so we are good to go. So one of your parentheses is that left over x plus 5. And your other parenthesis would be 2x minus 3. So 2x squared plus 7x minus 15 would factor into 2x minus 3 and x plus 5. If you have any questions on this process, again, please ask Mr. Server or please bring questions to class tomorrow. Trivia question today: how deep is the Titanic wreckage in the ocean? I'll give you a second to make your guess. It is 12,500 feet, or 2.4 miles underneath the surface. That was a really long way down. No thank you, I will not be seeing that anytime soon. 2.4 miles. Today's goal is being able to use grouping, brute force, or maybe even the box method if you want to watch that extra video. Your other goal would be solving for your x-intercepts. So taking these guys, setting them equal to 0, and then solving for x. Remember, our x-intercepts are the same thing as our solutions. You'll see that in your homework. But let's start here. Let's start with an example here. I would like to do one more AC method, and I will talk about brute force right after it. So AC method, again, we're going to split this -2 into 2 pieces, and it needs to add back to -2x, and then it's going to multiply to the same as A times C. So 3 times -5 would be -15x squared. I need to pick 2 numbers that multiply to -15 and add the 2. Those 2 numbers would be -5 and +3. So I've got 3x squared minus 5x plus 3x minus 5 here. I've just rewritten my equation slightly, and I've divided or split up, I should say, my -2x into 2 pieces. Now, if you look here, my 2 groups are not quite ready to factor out a common factor, right? Nothing is in common between 3x and 5x. This would be much more strategic or much better if I were to flip-flop these. So you can rewrite these middle terms however you would like. And if I do this, now I've got one group that shares a 3x in common, leaving over an x plus 1. And I've got another group that has a -5 in common, also leaving back an x plus 1. One of my factors is going to be that leftover x plus 1 that repeats, and the other is these 2 outside items, 3x minus 5. So we've factored this original equation back in green all the way down here in that grayish color. So now is where our brute force comes into play. This is actually the method that I learned when I was in high school that Mr. Server taught me. I don't know if he remembers, but this is how I remember learning it. And really, it's like a no frills, like kind of grind through it. Can you just smartly guess and check? And the more you do this, the easier it is. So I'm going to take this work, I'm going to shrink it down, or I'm going to try to shrink it down and move it off to the side here, just so we know the answer, just so we have that still on our page. And what brute force asks you to do or requires you to do is to really look closely at your equation. And 2 things you're thinking: what are my possible factors of A? If I'm going to split up A into this equation, that in FOIL is going to come from the F, right? That's the first connection that I make when I double distribute is this. And the only way for me to get 3x squared would be if I set up my equation like this. You could do like 1/2 or 1 1/2 x and 2x. Yeah, that would get you 3x squared, but for us, we're not going to do decimal coefficients. We will just have whole number coefficients. So really, the only factors of 3 are going to be 3 times 1, which forces my equation to look like this. Like I said, that's the F in FOIL. The other one that is like really restricted is your L, is your last two connections. These have to be something that multiplies to -5. So when you do brute force, you are setting up an equation for guess and check. And so you would say here, I'll do a couple of these just so we have some copies on hand, that either this equation is going to look like this. It's going to be 3x plus 1 and -5. It could be 3x minus 5 and plus 1, and you just kind of work through your possible options. Right now, I'm only worried about A, and I'm only worried about C, and one of these combos is going to give me 3x squared and -5. My other options here would be, what if I made 5 positive and 1 negative? And what if I made 5 positive on the right and 1 negative on the left? So if you look at these 4 and we just focus on F and L in FOIL, these are guaranteed to give me 3x squared and -5. What I'm not guaranteed though, however, is my B term. So my B term of -3 or -2x could be in these, but it might not. In fact, only one of these has a real B term of -2. So here is your guessing and checking. Is you would say, if I set my equation up like this, I have my 3x squared, that's a check mark. I've got my -5, that's a check mark. And now my inside terms, this one would give me -15x if I really did FOIL, and that one would give me +1x. That's not going to cut it. That's not the same as my original equation. So we can get rid of this one. This one's not going to work. My next option, again, this one is guaranteed to give me 3x squared. That's a check mark. This one's guaranteed to give me -5. But what I'm not guaranteed is my inside term. So let's see if we picked the right one. 3x times 1 would be +3x right here. -5 times x would be -5x. Those two are in fact going to combine to -2x. So by checking our answer, we have found that this second one is the right combination. Now, if that seemed like a whole lot of mumbo jumbo to you, we will go through a couple more examples. Wow, I could not think of the word example there for a minute. Whew, Mr. Roach, you're getting old. But let's talk about, when is brute force helpful? Brute force is helpful in a problem like this, where your A and C are very restricted. A and C do not have a lot of factors, right? They have limited options for multiplication. Brute force is going to be really tough if you have something like the next problem where A and C have a lot of factor options. So if you think through this one, right, A was 3, which, like I said, guarantees our equation to have a 3x and an x. There's no other way to get 3x squared there. -5, the only option is -5 times 1 or +5 times -1. There's only two options there. If you look at this one down below, this next example, my first two could be 3x and 2x. It could be 6x and 1x. So now I have multiple A terms to deal with. And additionally, this could be 15 times 1. This could be 3 times 5. So you have to grab these guys and say, well, I could do 3x plus 1, 3x plus 15, and that would give me 15 there and 6x squared there. I could also switch them. I could also do plus 3 plus 5. I could also switch and do 5 and 3, right? And this just gets really long, because then you need to also consider, what if I don't do 3 times 2, but I just do 6 times 1? So there are lots of different combinations when we think of how many factors of A and C there are, for this one, I would probably use the AC method, the grouping method. So I'm going to skip that one. We can come back to it maybe at the end of the video, but I would really like to focus our time on brute force. Notice brute force is going to be good for this one because 2x squared is guaranteed to split like this, 2x and x. The only way for me to get 2x squared is 2 times 1. Very similar with C. C is going to be 7 times 1. It could be 2 negatives. And that's really it, right? So you could have plus 7 plus 1. We could have, I'll write a couple out here so I have them ready. We could have our first option flipped, plus 1 plus 7. And otherwise, our other option would be minus 1 minus 7, or minus 7 minus 1. And those are really my only configurations that can happen. If I really need a 2x squared, that would come here. And a positive 7, that would come from any of these last connections. So from here, we're going to guess and check to find out which is the correct one. And that's going to be our answer. One thing to notice about this problem, I've got a negative 15x. So these first two are probably going to be no good because those inside terms are going to be positive numbers only. So if I look here, I've got 2x squared right here. That's a check mark. Good to go. I have 7 times 1 is 7 right there. This connection on the outside is going to give me 2 x's. And this connection on the inside is going to give me 7 x's, which is not the 15 that I wanted. So this one is a no-go. Let's get her out of there. I'm going to skip the next one because, again, notice that you have 2 positives, so I don't think those are going to work. I need negative 15. So let's check the third one. I've got 2x squared. That's good to go. I've got a positive 7 back here if I FOIL backwards. This one would be negative 14x. And this one would be negative 1x. There's your negative 15x. That means that third option here is going to be your factored form. So you consider all of your combinations, you consider all of your options, and then you work through and see which one makes the most sense. I got one more for you here. This one is going to be a little bit tougher because we have this 6 here for A, but it's definitely doable. A is going to have to show up like this. It's going to be 3x and 2x. And I will copy that and give me a couple of different options here. Let's move it first. Duplicate, duplicate. It could also be 6x and 1x. That would give me 6x squared. So I'll do the same thing. I'll duplicate it a few times so we have our options ready. So you can already see that this one's going to be a little bit longer than the last one because A has multiple factors, right? 3 times 2 or 6 times 1. C, on the other hand, isn't too bad. Negative 2 is going to be negative 2 times 1 or 2 times negative 1. So we can plug these in different orders, different combinations, right? We could look like that. We could flip-flop them and put 1 first. We could go back to our first order but make 2 positive and 1 negative. And again, we can flip-flop them. Oh boy. Good try, Mr. Roach. Negative and plus 2. There we go. Same thing is going to happen over here. Minus 2 plus 1. Plus 1 minus 2. Plus 2 minus 1. And minus 1 plus 2. In all of these, we are guaranteed the A term 6x squared and negative 2. What we need to figure out is which of these 8 combinations is going to give me negative 1x when I FOIL it out. So let's look at our left side. If we look at this guy here, there's my 6x squared. There's my negative 2. And if I look at the rest here, 1 times 2x would be 2x. 3 times negative 2 would be negative 6x. So this equation is 6x squared minus 4x right there, minus 2. So that one's not the right combination. We can get rid of that one. That one's not going to work for us. Let's try the same thing, but what if I made the 6x and x instead? Here's 6x squared. Here's negative 2, so we're good on that front. This connection would be negative 12x. That's going to be way too big already. Plus 1x, that one's not going to work, right? That would be negative 11x, but I only want negative 1x. So this one is out of here. You know, this one that we started with, that first example, was pretty close. So what if I flipped the numbers instead, right? This is some of your thought process as you work through these problems. Is like, well, this one got me kind of close. This one looks similar, so let's try this one. I have 3x times 2x would be our 6x squared. 2 times 1 would be negative 2. Now if we check our inside term, 3x times 1 would be 3x, and negative 2 times positive 2 would be negative 4x. Writing it all out left to right, I got 6x squared minus 4x plus 3x minus 2. It looks like this one is going to match our original equation. 6x squared minus x minus 2. So my factored form, through guessing and checking through brute force method, is right here. So I will say this method is not quite as clean as the other methods that we do. It's not quite as foolproof to give you an answer right away. You do have to do a little bit more work, but as long as you can consider every option, right? Negative 2 first, 1 second, or maybe I flip them, maybe I make one the other negative, the other positive, right? As long as you're able to work through all these options and guess and check, you'll be able to find the right one. And it does get easier with time. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. You can choose whatever method you'd like. You can brute force it and consider all 8 options. You can talk about the A times C. That would be fine too. But now it's a great time for a mental break after you get our final instructions. So remember that we have the same homework, Unit 7, Lesson 3. I'm going to offer one more video on my favorite method, the box method. If you have already have that finished, make sure your Lesson 1 and Lesson 2 homework is in. And then enjoy the rest of class. Make sure you ask questions, bring questions to class tomorrow, and I'll see you on Friday. Check out the box method if you'd like. Otherwise, take a quick mental break and get to your homework. Have a great day, friends.